What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're going to discuss the exciting topic of goalkeepers. Who are the best options at each price point, and which ones would I be looking to go for my own squad? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, let's get into it. So let's start with the most expensive goalkeepers. You've got three options at 5.5 million, which are Raya for Arsenal, Alisson for Liverpool, and then Ederson for Man City. Now, 5.5 million goalkeepers tend to be a bit divisive in FPL. Some people are open to owning them, and others are just dead against it. They will never spend that much money on a goalkeeper. And the reasons for that are, one, it's more interesting to spend your funds on an attacker or an attacking defender. But two, by the end of the season, what we tend to see is cheaper goalkeepers will have kept up with some of these more expensive ones, or even in some cases outscored them. So if you look at last year, the top scoring goalkeeper was Pickford on 153 points. Then it was Raya on 135. Leno and Onana both got 133. And then Flecken was on 119. So three of the top five goalkeepers from last year in terms of overall points all started the season at 4.5 million. So there is definitely value to be had there. Just to counter that point though, Raya didn't start the first 3 or 4 games for Arsenal, and because he was on loan, he couldn't play against Brentford, so his minutes were a bit less. So he would have scored more points if he'd played the whole season. And actually, if you look at points per match instead of total points, and we ignore Travers and Muric because they didn't play the whole season, right? Out of the goalkeepers that got regular minutes, Raya was on 4.2, the best. Pickford was at 4, and then Alisson was at 3.8 points per match. So two of the top three were 5.5 million goalkeepers. So really, it's like any other position. There will be cheap players that do really well, but it's maybe a little bit more difficult to know exactly who that will be right now. Whereas by spending that extra money, you get that level of consistency. It's like any other position. I've used the example of Bruno Fernandes before. Absolutely boring pick for 8.5, but he's going to be fairly consistent. Will there be 6.5 and 7.5 million midfielders that outscore him? Yes. But there's a lot of options at those price points, and it's difficult to know in game week 1 exactly who they will be. So by spending 5.5, you hopefully get a bit of consistency. Now, Ederson had a terrible season last year, 3.4 points per match, and it's almost like a meme, right? He'll only get 2 or 6 points. For what it's worth, Man City defence is one of the best in the league. But for some reason, whenever anyone owns Ederson in FPL, he just finds a way to concede. And I personally, I'm open to owning him again, but he's the last one that I would pick for game week 1. Because if you're looking for a short-term option for the fixtures, it's probably Alisson, right? For the first 5 game weeks for Liverpool, you've got Ipswich away game week 1, Brentford at home game week 2, United away game week 3, then Forest at home and Bournemouth at home in game weeks 4 and 5. Even after that, Wolves away in 6 and Palace away in 7. Alisson's a really good short-term option. And personally, I think those fixtures are just slightly better than what Ederson has. If I can even find Ederson on this list, I can. I'm going to find a Man City player here. Here we go. So you got Chelsea away, Ipswich at home is obviously great. West Ham away, Brentford at home, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away. So first 6 game weeks, you've got to play Chelsea and Newcastle both away and Arsenal at home. So I think if you're looking short term, you'll probably go in Liverpool. I mean, you could make the argument that Liverpool have got a new manager. We're not quite sure how they're going to set up, how they're going to play, whether there'll be a transitional period. They won't be quite as good. I get that, right? But it could also be that Slot comes in and Liverpool do great, and they've got the fixtures to do that. So if I'm thinking short term, I'm going Alisson over Ederson. If it's a more long-term pick, then I'm probably just going Raya, because last year, points per match, he was the top scoring keeper, like I said, out of players that played regularly. But also, Arsenal defence was the best in the league last year. And I think what you have from them is consistency going into this season. Like Man City, right? Same manager. Off the ball, their shape is great. You've got Saliba, Gabriel still there, Ben White. They've been consistent players in that Arsenal defence. Declan Rice in front of them is great as well. If I'm going for a long-term pick at this price, it's absolutely Raya. Now, for 3 of the first 5 game weeks, they got tricky fixtures we've spoken about quite a lot. But longer term than that, they get much better. I mean, Wolves at home, Villa away, Brighton at home, first 3 is not that bad. It's the Spurs and Man City away games which are tougher. But then you go Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth. And then it's a bit trickier, 9, 10, 11. But at that point, right, lots of people are even thinking about wildcarding. And if you had to keep Raya longer, I don't think it'd be a problem. Like, Arsenal are capable of picking up clean sheets in those tougher games. It's not going to happen in every single one, of course. But it's possible given how good their defence is. 0.75 expected goals conceded per match last year. In comparison, it was 1.2 for Liverpool and 0.91 for Man City. So I personally will probably not spend this much money on a goalkeeper. I would rather put it into my attack. I just find that more interesting. And it's always fun to try and figure out who the 4.5 value pick will be. And obviously you can just target the fixtures for the start of the season. But I don't think it's crazy to go 5.5. And if you can pick one and be happy with the rest of your squad, then it's worth going for, because they do have that consistency that the cheaper options don't necessarily have. One or two, maybe even 3 or 4 of them will, but who will that be? It's anyone's guess. It's a bit more easy to know that Arsenal for sure and maybe Liverpool will be pretty good defences this year. So longer term pick, I'm going Raya. I think if it's short term, I'm going Alisson. Edison, I'm just ignoring for now. So next we've got the £5 million goalkeepers, and there are definitely some interesting options at this price point. Although that being said, from a personal point of view, from playing around with my squad during pre-season, it also feels like a bit of an awkward price point. Because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking for 0.5 million more, I can tap into an elite defence like Arsenal and get Raya. Or I could just go for Alisson and target Liverpool's opening fixtures. And although Liverpool's defence isn't quite so good, they were still in the top 5 for expected goals conceded last year. So that thought is always running through my mind when I'm looking at 5 million keepers. And then if I'm not willing to spend that money on a premium, I feel like, well, I might as well just spend 4.5 and try and hit that value pick. But that's kind of personal preference, right? I do think there are generally some good options at 5 million. The standout would be Jordan Pickford. 1.47 expected goals conceded per match last year for Everton. Obviously a way off some of those top defences, but still one of the best of the rest. And obviously Pickford has been a consistent goalkeeper for a very long time now. And one of the reasons why the cheaper than premium goalkeepers can keep up is because of save points and stuff like that. And we saw Pickford with 4 points per match last year. He's got to be one of, if not the top option at 5 million, especially when you look at the fixtures that Everton have got as well. So home games in 3 of the first 6 game weeks against Brighton, Bournemouth and Palace. Not easy, but not bad either. And then the away games, Spurs, Villa and Leicester. So already I'm thinking, okay, maybe not getting a clean sheet Spurs away, but definitely save points there. And then you run on to longer term fixtures. Newcastle at home, Ipswich away, Fulham at home, Southampton away, West Ham away, Brentford at home. Everton don't have like a truly bad run of fixtures for quite a while. So if you're looking someone at 5 million who did really well last year, who could absolutely justify that price increase this year, I think Pickford is the one. Nick Pope is interesting because although Newcastle's defence wasn't great last year, they did have quite a few injuries, and Nick Pope was one of them. And I think with him back, that defence will improve, especially if they can get some of their other defenders fully fit all the time. Right? I know that Botman's going to be out for a while, but they've got backup now in Lloyd Kelly. Byrne can play there. They've got good options for left back as well. I would probably expect Newcastle defence to improve on what they did last year. The only thing is, from memory, the fixtures are not necessary. I mean, they're not bad, right? Short term, from game weeks 1 to 5, you get to play Southampton, Bournemouth, Wolves and Fulham. But as I've said before, 3 of those games are away. Then it's City, Everton away, Brighton at home, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home. So I think as a short-term option, a short and long-term option, I'd probably rather go Pickford. But if you want to target those early fixtures for Newcastle, I would expect improvement for them. I've put Leno in. Look, he scored really well last year, so I can't say that he's a bad pick. He's great for save points and stuff like that. And in fact, if you look at the numbers for the last 2 seasons, 133 points last year, 142 the season before. So there is some consistency there. They have lost Paulinho. I'm not sure it's going to make as big a difference as everyone is saying, but possibly they could be a little bit worse defensively. But the reason I've included him is because the short-term fixtures are really good. After United away in game week 1, you've got Leicester at home, Ipswich away, West Ham at home, Newcastle at home and Forest away. And again, they have City away in game week 7. But then the fixtures after that are Villa, Everton, Brentford, Palace, Wolves. Like, they don't have a really bad fixture run. I just think personally, as well as Leno has done over the last 2 seasons, their defensive numbers in terms of expected goals conceded not as good as Everton. And I don't think anyone would sit here and say that Leno is a massively better goalkeeper than Pickford either. And you can see that with the points per match. I just think if you're spending 5, it's probably got to be Jordan Pickford. Just to quickly cover off the other options, because it's not a huge amount at 5 million. You got Vicario at Spurs. Spurs defence not great last year. And they also got to play Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, Man United away, Brighton away in the first 7 game weeks. I'm just not seeing a huge amount of clean sheets. I mean, Spurs are a team that you would think would improve, but they haven't signed a huge amount of players that would make you think there's going to be sweeping changes unless Ange Postecoglou kind of changes his setup. And I don't think that's going to happen. Now, they also had a few injuries last year, right? It wasn't very often they had all of their back four fit and available. I just look at those fixtures, I'm just not sure I would go there early. I'm definitely interested in him longer term, but I think at the start of the season I would probably avoid. Like I mentioned in an earlier video that I'm going to avoid Pedro Porro. I could maybe be persuaded to go for him because of Leicester away game week 1, Everton at home 2, and Brentford at home in 5. But that's really from an attacking perspective. It's not because I'm expecting a huge amount of clean sheets. So I think Vicario is one for later on. Onana's playing in an absolutely terrible Man United defence, which may improve this year, but let's wait and see if that happens. But he does get a lot of opportunities to make saves. And if we combine that with a possible improvement for Man United this year, then he could be worth looking at. The fixtures are okay. I still want to see Man United sign a new midfielder. I think if they're going into the season with Yoro, who's injured for 3 months, Martinez can't stay fit, Casemiro is the defensive midfielder, like, I'm not sure there's going to be a massive improvement in that Man United defence. So again, I'd probably ignore him. So for me, the main options are probably Pope, Pickford, and Leno. And if I was going for one in game week 1, it would absolutely be Jordan Pickford. He's not a bad option, like I said. I just think if I'm not going for a premium person, I'm probably just going to go for a 4.5. So although I've indicated in this video and other ones that I'm probably going to go for a 4.5 million goalkeeper in my own squad, as you start to think about them a bit more and discuss them, you can see why sometimes it's worth paying that little bit extra for security of starts, better fixtures, and better defences as well. Because there's lots of 4.5 options, but there's more uncertainty as well. So if you look at the 3 players I've got on screen, Flecken, Miguel at Forest, and then Sanchez at Chelsea, well, we're not even sure who the number 1's going to be at Forest or Chelsea, and Flecken's short-term fixtures aren't necessarily ideal. So there's a bit more uncertainty, but that's not going to stop me trying to find the best 4.5 and just saving money on this position. One of the reasons that I've got Flecken in my most recent draft is because you compare him with his 4 million backup at Brentford, Valdemarsson. And it's quite nice doing that because if something happens to Flecken, you don't have to make a transfer. You've got Brentford's backup goalkeeper there. It's not an essential thing to do, but if you can get a decent option with a 4 million backup, I quite like that. And it's very unlikely that I'm going to need 2 or 3 outfield players from Brentford anytime soon. The short-term fixtures are not great, as plenty of people pointed out in my recent draft video. They've got Liverpool away, City away, and Spurs away in game weeks 2, 4, and 5. But game weeks 1 and 3 are Palace at home and Southampton at home. And longer term, the fixtures are really good. So if you are someone that is certain you're going to wildcard in game weeks 4, 6, whenever it might be, I wouldn't go for Flecken. There's too many bad short-term fixtures. If you're someone that likes to hold on to it longer term or wants to leave your options open, I think Brentford's longer-term fixtures are really good. So I quite like Flecken as an option. But again, if you need someone short-term, I definitely wouldn't go for him. The fixtures are not good enough. If we look at, let's just quickly go to the fixture analyzer on Hub. If I go to the first 10 game weeks and order it by clean sheets and look at the teams there. So the order they've got is Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Everton, Villa. I actually forgot to mention Martinez as 5 million option for Aston Villa. You could look at him as well. The fixtures are quite good. I'd still rather go for Pickford. When you're looking for 4.5 million goalkeepers, the first teams are Forest, just behind Villa, and then Palace, just behind Newcastle. But both of those teams, there's uncertainty about who the number 1 is. I think it'll be Miguel for Forest and Henderson for Crystal Palace. But unless the managers tell us for sure before the season starts, we're not going to know, right? And because they've got such good backups, if it does start to go wrong early on, they could make a change, right? If Henderson plays poorly, they might bring Johnson in. If Miguel starts poorly, they might bring Sales back in. And that's my slight worry with those two teams. But if you're looking for the short and longer term fixtures, I'd probably rather target Forest and Palace than Brentford. The key thing with Brentford is Flecken is the number 1 there. So that's why I've got him there. I'm not yet willing to give up hope on a Chelsea goalkeeper. At the time of recording, Jorgensen has now been, let me just bring it up here, has now been priced. He's also 4.5. So we are going to be able to get a 4.5 million goalkeeper for Chelsea as long as Maresca comes out and tells us who's number 1. Again, you've got exactly the same problem as with Forest and Palace, that if Sanchez starts the season and Maresca wants to build up from the back and Sanchez looks dodgy with his feet, and by the way, I don't think he's amazing. I think one of the reasons people talk about Sands is because of how good he is with his feet. I think he's confident enough to do it, but I'm not sure he's that good at it, so there could be a problem. He may switch to Jorgensen instead. They've also got Petrovic and Kepa. I'm expecting those two to probably be loaned out or sold, but there is possibility that the goalkeeper could be swapped. But the thing is, Chelsea's fixtures are very good. After City away, it's Wolves away, Palace at home, Bournemouth away, West Ham away, Brighton at home, Forest at home. They weren't necessarily elite last year in terms of their defence, like Arsenal. They weren't as good as Liverpool either. But they are a team that you could see improve. They've got so many good players. At some point, it could click. But there is a bit of hope behind that rather than it being guaranteed. Right? It's a bit like Man United. I think Man United fans are expecting them to improve this year. I'm not sure it's going to be massively defensively. And there's probably concerns over Chelsea as well. But they've got the fixtures to do it early on. So I think if you could tell me who the Chelsea number one is going to be for the first 10 or so game weeks, I would go for them. That would be my number one 4.5. But right now, as a longer term pick, I'd go Flecken and Valdemarson as the backup. And shorter term, I would wait and hear what is said about Crystal Palace and Forest goalkeepers and go for them instead, because I think the fixtures in the short term are decent. And also, by the way, for Forest last year, expected goals conceded per game 1.41. Pretty good. If they can improve on set pieces and stuff like that, we should see a few more clean sheets. Just quickly, in terms of other options at this price point, there's not really anyone I would look at. Like Verbruggen at Brighton could be an option, but they also, short term, they've got Everton away, Man United at home, Arsenal away, first three, and Chelsea away, Spurs at home, Newcastle away, game week 6, 7 and 8. And also, he might be out. There was rumours about an injury for him, so I probably wouldn't go there. Bournemouth, I definitely wouldn't touch because Neto was first choice last year, but there was lots of speculation that he might get replaced, and so that's a problem. So I think really you're looking at Chelsea, Flecken, Palace, or Forest. They're probably the main 4.5s. I feel like I'm probably missing someone. Areola possibly at West Ham, and again, you get to do the 4 million backup with Fabianski, but I don't think the fixtures are good enough short term. Longer term, they're not bad, but I don't think they're as good as Brentford's. Lopetegui might have West Ham more defensively solid this year, but I don't think I would risk it early on. So it's Flecken, Palace, Forest, or Chelsea for me. In terms of 4 million options quickly, the reality is I don't think there is any right now that are going to play. If Areola gets injured and Fabianski's definitely the backup, then you've got an option there. But right now, that's not the case. Some people are saying that Poulsen at Bournemouth might become the number one, because if you look at the options they've got quickly here, let me just find Bournemouth, it's Neto, Travers and Poulsen. Now, like I just said, Neto was under a bit of pressure, I would say, last year. Travers didn't play a huge amount last year either. So even when Neto wasn't great, Travers still didn't come in. So maybe Poulsen gets a go, but you'd really need that information early on. So I think for the 4 million goalkeepers right now, there's just not really great picks. So for me, my favourite 5.5 is Raya long term, Alisson short term. Favourite 5 short or long term is probably Pickford. And then for 4.5s, it's Flecken longer term, and then one of the Chelsea, Forest or Palace goalkeepers, if we know who's number one. Let me know in the comments below which goalkeeper you are picking, how much you are spending. If you've enjoyed that video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcast. And if you want to make use of all the tools over on Fantasy Football Hub like I have done in this video, there is 50% off at the moment. Links in the description below. I'll catch you again tomorrow for another video.